Start the recording, and without further ado, Rob, take it away, share your screen, and please introduce yourself and then take it away.
Okay, so let's, what I'm not going to do, I'm not going to, what do we look like there? Nope, that's the wrong one. I wasn't going to share my screen. What I was going to do, what do I want to do? I want it on this one. There we go. So if you spotlight me, make me big, the reason for this will become obvious as we move forward. There we go. Look, see, hello, here I am. So the title of the session, I ain't no data scientist. Why do I need Jupyter Notebooks? It was a bit of fun, and if I actually click in the right place, we can do this. So my name is Rob Sewell. I am going to put my standing table up because I've realized that I think I'll do better like that. There we go. I'm lucky enough to be a dual MVP. So I'm a cloud and data center management MVP and a data platform MVP. And that's all the community stuff I do. I do both data platform community work and I do PowerShell community stuff. So I'm really lucky. I get to play in both of these worlds. The best way to get in touch with me is on Twitter, SQLDBA with beard. That's the best way to get in touch with me. If you wish to read the things I write, you can find them at blog.robsewell.com, which is hidden by the translation, but that's okay. So the reason I want to share my screen is because it means I can do cool things like this. And some of you have already seen, this is where I live in this world. People like to see what setups do we have. So this is how I work. And yep, there is a kitten here. And the other one you'll normally see back down there, but he's not there right now. So he might come and entertain us as well. So let's clear something up. We'll get the elephant out of the room. I'm not very happy about this Brexit thing. I do like this sign though. It's the worst trade negotiation since Star Wars: The Phantom Menace. It's probably about right. And seriously, can we just Ctrl Z this thing? Because that would be awesome. But let's talk about Jupyter. This is the planet Jupyter, taken the South Pole, in fact, taken on a flyby by the spaceship Juno. But actually, we're not going to talk about that Jupyter. We're going to talk about this Jupyter, the one that's spelt with a Y. And the reason for doing that is because the name comes from the planet Jupiter. The data scientists, the people who made notebooks, wanted a name that evoked the traditions of science. It also includes the languages that they use, Julia, Python, and R. But most importantly, Galileo was the first person to discover the moons of Jupiter, and his publication gave the data as well as the results and his ways of working it out. And this meant that other people could reproduce his results. And that is a core part of why data scientists want Jupyter Notebooks. So what is a Jupyter Notebook? Well, let's go back in time. Go back to 2006. We were running PowerShell and we were able to do it in this blue box. Fast forward to 2010. Another PowerShell blue box, this time version 2. But we had the ISE as well. Excellent. We could have some scripts and we could have a place to run them. Go to 2012. Sure enough, it's a blue box. ISE looks a little bit fancier. We got the command add-on, which was always the first thing that I closed when I opened ISE. Let's move forward. Let's go to 2017. Oh, lo and behold, PowerShell 5, and it's a blue box. ISE's just a little bit shinier, really. 2018 came along. My oh my, PowerShell runs cross-platform. This time we've got a black box. 2016, 2017, around that time, David Wilson announced PowerShell for Visual Studio Code. 2019, we've got Windows Terminal. It's amazing. We can now have tabs of different language shells. You can have all of the shells open at the same time if you wish. In fact, I often do, including CMD with an appropriate calendar. So for a decade and a half, Houston, we've had a problem. Without some effort, and I appreciate that we're in a PowerShell user group and that there are ways of doing logging, that we could turn logging on at various levels in our organization. We could write scripts that enable logging. We could turn on transcription. But without that effort, every single one of these has a massive flaw. Let me point it out to you. Imagine that it's 3 o'clock in the morning, because these things always happen at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you've been called out. System number 7 has broken and it's really important and everybody's flapping and you need to get it fixed straight away. Okay, we've got a pester test for that. We've got a pester test that's going to run against all of our infrastructure and find out which bits are not set up as we expect them to be. And we run our pester test and we read our results. We take action on the thing that's broken and we bring the system back up again and we write it down in the incident management system and we send that off, close, resolve the incident, and we go back to sleep. The next morning, we come into the office. Okay, we walk in front of our laptop and turn it on and open up a Teams meeting and go through a wash-up process, a retrospective of the incident. What happened in this incident? How can we improve the way that we respond? What things could we do to stop it happening again? That sort of information, really useful part of your incident management process. And whilst you're doing that, you're saying, well, see, I ran my pester test and this had failed. So then I went and often fixed it doing this. And Christian says, no. 2 months ago when I did that, the pester test had this and this and this wrong. You know, we didn't just get that one thing failing. Are you sure it was only that one? Have we missed something? Something's still not working. I'm like, no, I'm sure, definitely. Look, I open up my laptop and I look, here's Visual Studio. Oh no, I closed it. Because the problem that we've got here is that when you hit that button, the results of your pester test, they're gone. They're just gone. And that's the way it's been for 15 years. We've not been able to keep our results without some effort. That's the biggest reason why I think that you guys and girls, as PowerShell folk, should use Jupyter Notebooks. There are many other reasons, but this one is the best one of all. So, come on, Rob, what is a Jupyter Notebook? Now, I used to be a production DBA. I know what data scientists do. They do things with Python and R and Spark, and they make predictions and models, and I literally have no idea what they do. So if we bring it down to its simplest form, a Jupyter Notebook is a document that can contain text, executable code, images and GIFs, and query results. If I'd run that pester check inside a notebook, I could have attached that to the incident. And when we were having our discussion the next morning, Christian said, no, I wouldn't do that. We could say, well, look, here are the results. This is what it did. So where do we run Jupyter Notebooks? I'm going to say that you should take use of this program called Azure Data Studio. And excuse me while I have a drink because my voice is running away from me. So Azure Data Studio is a cross-platform environment for data professionals. And you're going, yeah, come on, Rob, looks just like Visual Studio Code. Oh, you're right. Because look, if you look, this one is Visual Studio Code and this one is Azure Data Studio. Or maybe it was the other way around. Because they're built on the same code base. Literally, Visual Studio Code is used by Azure Data Studio to create Azure Data Studio. So what's the difference? Why do we have these two things? Azure Data Studio has some extra features that enable it to interact with the Microsoft Data Platform. So things called managed instances, Azure SQL database, big data clusters, Azure Arc, all of these features have additional capability that Azure Data Studio does. And also, Azure Data Studio is for data professionals, and in general, they like things in pretty colors. So Azure Data Studio gives you some extra functionality with some overlays that aren't available in Visual Studio Code. The other thing that's different is that Visual Studio Code has debug capability, and at the moment, Azure Data Studio doesn't. Other than that, they're identical. You can run PowerShell with the PowerShell extension in both. You can add many extensions that you have in Visual Studio Code into Azure Data Studio. Not all of them, but you can add many of them. But it gets better, especially for PowerShell folk, because we have .NET interactive notebooks. So these were announced in Ignite. They're now in Preview 3. They make use of .NET Core. They've got all of the goodness that you've got with Jupyter Notebooks, but they've got additional PowerShell, PowerShell Core, PowerShell 7, and C#, and F#, and HTML, and JavaScript. And before somebody asks, no, not VB. Because the story is quite complicated, I'm also going to mention that there is the notebook mode, which is available with the PowerShell preview extension. Oops, let's go back. Thank you. In the PowerShell preview extension. It doesn't keep your results. It does turn your comments into Markdown. I mention it because it's there. I never use it, but it might work for you. So what are we going to do? We know that this thing exists. You've said that query results are really important. What are we going to do? Well, as we discussed, incident response is a brilliant way of doing it. In two places. So that 3 o'clock in the morning, I've got a call scenario. Absolutely, that's a really good place where we could have pre-written notebooks with steps to follow, our troubleshooting steps, and keep our results. But also, when the phone goes and something is broken, I will open up a new notebook and start typing at the top. Jan phoned. He said something is broken. It was to do with this system. And then I'd run a query, run a PowerShell command. Maybe we're looking at a host and we're checking services, or we're looking at the event log, or whatever it might be. But then as I start to troubleshoot, I've built up that story within my notebook. I'm recording my activity, and then we can go through. By doing the things that we regularly do. That's a really good place to have notebooks. These common tasks that we have, if we just have a notebook, we can just easily run those, attach them into incident management systems or request management systems, put them in. This is what I did. These are the results. Ta-da! This person must have this answer. Especially important, I think, in these days of remote working, is new starter introduction training. Whenever a new person joins your team, it immediately reduces the output of that team. Because the new person needs to say, hey, where's this? Where's that? How do I find this? Which credentials do I use for that? How much easier would it be if you could say, hey, ask me anytime you like, of course, but here is a set of notebooks that's going to enable you to go and see where you get this information, where our key vaults are stored, where our storage is, where our logging is, which log analytics are we using, all of these useful pieces of information. They'll begin to understand the naming conventions of your environment, which domains to use, because you can put it in the documentation alongside their code. Doing demos. Hey, boss, I did this great thing. Look, here it is. Hey, client, here is this thing that we're going to do. Have a look. Hey, team, I've been working on this script and I wanted to see what you thought about it before we move forward. The advantage with all of those and community presentations and showing off your open source work is that you can run your notebook. You can have the results already saved. And then if for any reason something goes wrong, you can just revert back to your notebook with the results in it and say, well, this is what would happen. Here are the results. This is what you would get. And you can carry on without interruption. But realistically, don't let those ideas stop you, because the universe is your limit. Your imagination of the things that you can use to take this forward are here. There's no set guidelines here. This is everybody's moving forward and learning new ways of doing this. I've taken this with permission from Julie in the Microsoft team. So she works in the data platform team, and this is the incident response flow that they use internally within Microsoft. A thing happens. An incident gets put into the incident system. Might be somebody phoning up, might be an email, might be a Teams message, might be an automated alert from some monitoring. But it interacts with a person. And the person has to start to investigate this issue and try to mitigate it. And what they do is they go to their troubleshooting notebook repository and open an existing notebook that relates to this incident. And they use that as auditing for their incident. And as they carry on, they fix the incident. And they then use that same notebook within their post-mortem. And part of their post-mortem wash-up retrospective scenarios is that they rate this notebook. How good was this notebook? How can we make this notebook better to help us fix? And then commit those changes back into the troubleshooting notebook repository. But of course, sometimes the notebook doesn't have, the repository doesn't have a notebook for this particular thing. So they create a new notebook. They do their investigation and their mitigation. Their post-mortem probably needs a bit more work, because at 3 o'clock in the morning, when you're writing that notebook as you are fixing the incident, you're probably not going to put everything in that you need to. So then there's a little bit more work there to make this notebook ready to go into the repo, and suddenly it's ready. And at both times, they put these notebooks into their incident management system because they have the query results in there. And of course, they try and automate as much of this as they possibly can. So that's cool, yeah. Enough of the talk. Let's have a look at a notebook. But first, I bet you're wondering, how did you do this? Well, it just took a little bit of PowerShell and PowerPoint and a program called Streamlabs OBS, which is how we're transmitting this feed into Teams. And if you want to do the same thing, I've written about it there with there's my short link, and it also links to Scott Hanselman's post where he's done it using not Streamlabs OBS, the other one, and he does it with a C# application. So feel free to go and do that if you want to have a bit of fun with your PowerPoint. So are there any questions? No, there are shaky heads. Okay. Shaky heads is good. So we're going to start here. This is Azure Data Studio. As you can see, we've got the capability to have extensions, and the extension that I've got, the PowerShell extension. That means that I can do control single quote. And now, we're just in PowerShell. There's nothing different here. It's exactly the same. We can write some code up here and run it down. A couple of things to understand is that the icons on the left here. Oh, look at that. Let's have Zoom it running. Go for it.
Yeah, that's what I was just trying to ask you. Could you please make a screen a little bit bigger for the recording, or trying to use Zoom it? Yes.
So, I mean, I can share my screen if you want for the demos.
No, let's try it first, and then
if you want to, just tell me.
Oh, yeah.
So what we've got here is some what we were saying. The icons are in a different order, so that will catch you out because it catches me out every time. And I spend a lot of time in between the two of them, so that'll be a bit different. The other thing you'll do is you'll do Control and oh no, actually let's not do that. Let's do Control Shift and P and toggle Screencast mode, because what Screencast mode is it shows you what keys I'm pressing. So Control Shift and P, and you might go New File, and it's going to create you a new over here, right? Okay, well that's kind of good. If we go Control Shift and P, and I want a new untitled file. This is a SQL file. You can see if we look down here, we're a SQL file. So I want to go Control K and then M. I'll change that to PowerShell, and Integrated Console comes up. If you've got an older version of Azure Data Studio, you might find that doesn't work as you expect it. But just to show you, there we go. We are in just like Visual Studio Code, literally nothing different, except you've got no debug capability. But There we go. We can still go change our PowerShell versions there if you want to. So let's not save that. The trick always with Visual Studio Code and Azure Data Studio, Ctrl-Shift-P, and start typing. So we'll start typing notebook. So we'll have a new notebook. When our new notebook comes up, it's going to look like this. So we've got our cell. We've got a button that says run all. We've got our type of kernel. And we've got this button that says attach to. Over on this side, this is the most important button we've got over here. This is our clear all results button. So let's click on the text button, and this means that we can use this. I'll put it in the view that will be normal for you. You could create a heading and say, this is my notebook. And then we could start writing some things using this rich text view, WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. I generally have it in this mode. This is my Markdown mode because I'm really happy just typing in Markdown. So when you're in this mode, you've got the editing view and the live view. So I could start writing, this is a bullet point, this is another, and we could do this. We'll say bye to Christian, bye Christian. But it's just Markdown. We can just do our thing if you're happy with that. But we're going to go back to this view here, the rich text view. Indeed, my friend, happy Christmas. And I'm going to say, remember we were talking about runbooks. Now I know you folk. You have got stuff stored in OneNote. Yeah, you got things like this in OneNote, and you know this is fine. OneNote's brilliant because it's really easy just to search for things. Let's search for Git flow. There we go. It's really neat. It's fantastic, but it doesn't really help with our versioning. So I've seen scenarios where resolving an incident took much longer because the new person looked for, let's imagine the system's called Git flow, and they picked the first note that they got and they used the scripts there, and it turned out that they should have used the fifth one because that was the newer one. But there we go. So you've got your notes into OneNote, got all of your code there. Maybe how can we make use of that in a Jupyter Notebook? Well, let's do Control-A and Control-C, and let's dive back over to here. And literally, we'll do Control-V. And would you look at that? All right, this is one of the coolest things that we've got. Yeah, we've just got straight copy and paste out of OneNote. We could do it out of Excel. We can do it out of let's pick a web page. Let's do the PowerShell Gallery. Why not? We'll pick the PowerShell Gallery, and we'll just copy some of this. We'll see. We'll go back to our notebook. Let's Control-Z out of that, and then we'll Control-V. Poof. Even better, these links are links. So would you want to open this link? We've just copied the entire thing. Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah, we can build up our notebook really simply. All right, let's take it a step further. How about if we do something like this, right? There is no way I could do anything other than just take a screenshot of maybe some people that are in this meeting. All right. Here we go. There we go. That has literally just been a screenshot that I have taken, pasted straight in there. How cool is that? When you're writing your notebook, you can just screenshot, boof. So let's see what's happening in the background. Basically, what we've got here is base64 encoded image. And that's what's happening in the background. This magic is just taking all of that clipboard, turn it into base64 encoded image. It is fantastic. I love it. It is my second most favorite feature about notebooks. So that's cool. Okay, well, let's do some things. Let's look at our code. Up here, you can see that we are, at the moment, running a Sql kernel. Now, this word kernel, it's not like a Linux kernel. Basically, kernel means what language we're running. In effect, what's happening here is we are running a Python server and we are making use of packages. So we want to change our package, and we'll change our package to PowerShell. Takes a couple of minutes just to fizz itself forward, and sure enough, there we go. Now we've got our PowerShell kernel, and in fact, this version table, there we are. We've got IntelliSense enabled within there. We can press this play button, and we have our results available to us. So things to note about this notebook. Let's add another code cell and do pwd. So pwd is going to give you the path that the shell is currently at, present working directory. And in this scenario, it thinks that it's at the root of my user profile, which is a bit of a blow when my notebook, oh, I haven't saved it. Maybe it's because I haven't saved it. Okay. The reason I'm thinking is because I've done this in the wrong order, my demo. And what I should have done is I've just done that. I said, hey, guy, what's happened to my results? If I've done that in Visual Studio Code, if I've done that in PowerShell, in this ISE, what's happened to the results of the commands that I've run?
They are gone.
Yes,
they are gone.
They're gone. Yes, yeah.
Okay, so what's happened to the results of the commands that I've run that were in this notebook that I didn't even save?
Probably they are still in.
Of course, you know that this is for fun and games. And of course, when I open up Azure Data Studio, and in fact, we don't want that anymore, thank you. We'll let it just load up. Sure enough, my results, there's my PS version table, there's my PWD. That's pretty cool. Would I trust that autosave for a completely unsaved notebook? No. But has it ever let me down? No. I have once in probably 14 or 15 months now, in an Insiders edition, had a notebook which has failed to keep the results of the last thing that I ran. But all sorts of things went wrong on my machine at the same time. And I've run notebooks on many different machines in many corporate environments. I've run many notebooks. So if I get one failure rate, that's a pretty low number. So let's, that's what we're doing. We're looking at our PWD. So let's save this. We'll control S, and we'll save it as C/temp/ let's call it Christian. Why not? He's not here. He'll never know. Don't tell him. So we've saved that, and the same thing happens here. If we close this, we'll just toggle our screencast mode back on, do Ctrl O, and there's our Christian notebook. We've still got our results. Super, super cool. So let's run this PWD again. sometimes I get really annoyed with demos when they work like you're not expecting them to. Okay, we're going to do that same one in .NET Interactive. So I updated my Azure Data Studio today. And when I did this demo on Monday or whenever it was, Monday? Yes, Monday, when I did it to the German SQL user, one of the German SQL user groups, that would have come up with a different result. So cool, brand new, as long as you're in most up-to-date Azure Data Studio, the notebook does know where it is. So it's really cool because it means you can now have relative paths for your thing. Because if you think about it, what we're trying to do here is create a notebook that we can give to our team and they each can run wherever they want to be. If we have to hard code a path in, this becomes more difficult. And realistically, what you can do, of course, is just ask the user, where is your path? You know, or you could use your user profile or some static place, but it's not always so simple. So what's a notebook stored as? If we do gc c-temp Christian, we've just got some. I got told off for not using set clipboard a while ago, so I always just pipe to clip, but it gives you an extra return character. So let's click up there and have a new query. If we do Control K and then M, all we've got is some JSON. No, wrong one. That one. If you have not saved your file, Azure Data Studio doesn't like you changing the language. Real pain if you've just done a new file. So what you have to do is you have to go Control-Shift-P and have a new untitled file. And then we should be able to go Control-K, M, PowerShell. Great.
I thought this would be the same code base as Visual Studio Code.
Yeah, but Visual Studio Code, you can do it once the autosave's kicked in. It will do it. It's Azure Data Studio, because it defaults to the T-SQL file. It's ever so annoying. So let's go Control-K, Control-0. All we've got is a JSON file. JSON file is made up of some metadata. It's telling us what our notebook is. Don't think that you could say to your user, you know what, let's make this into a SQL file. Okay, there lies dragons. It's a jungle. Things will go wrong. Tigers will come and eat your code. Your notebook will not work. And in fact, I'm just going to not even save it because sometimes it crashes Azure Data Studio. You can only run one language in a notebook. Then we have our cells. Our cells will say, well, these are code. If they were just the markdown, it would have the JSON escaped markdown in there as well. And there we are. That's what we ran. PS version table. This is a GUID for this particular one. And then output type of stream. Execution count of 1. And our results come out like this. Yes, JSON. We've got our /ns in here, but we've got everything way, way, way over here. Oh, look out. Hi, Julie.
Hey.
Hello.
We were talking about you just now.
I'm trying to transfer my Teams meeting to my desktop. For some reason, I can, so I may be kind of, actually, I can't transfer to my desktop. Okay, I'll be back.
Okay. So that's Julie, who is part of the Microsoft Tools team and is in charge of notebooks. So that's why she's come along to see what's going on. So where were we? So we were looking at our results. So the important thing about our results here, perhaps not quite so important for PowerShell folk as it is for SQL folk, but I'm going to say it anyway, because if you're returning data here, that's important. Maybe it's IP addresses, maybe it's DNS, maybe it's API keys. Anything like this, it is stored in a flat file on the user's desktop, whichever user it is that's running this notebook. So it's really important to make sure that you consider that when you're thinking about how you're going to run your notebook, where you're going to save your results, and how you're going to protect them. We said, as we can see, it's just JSON. So it's a flat file. So because it's a flat file, we can just dump it into source control. So if we pick, I haven't changed anything, have I? Let's pick a notebook. Let's go find a notebook. These are not .NET notebooks. We'll have a look at some of this in a minute. We'll go to a DBA Tools one. We'll open this notebook. And I tell you what, let's just clear our results. All right, so we'll clear all our results. We'll save our notebook. And the beauty of doing that is that then we can see inside our source control, we've got all of the changes that we've made. So you can see the last time we've run. So while we're here, let's look at this as well. Consider when you're writing your notebook that you might want to include which user account is running the notebook and when they ran this particular cell. If we go back to our incident response scenario, it might be really important to know when we captured that information to match it up with other monitoring systems. It's not included in the results of the notebook. So just run a get dash date, poof. Grab the username if you wish. Just put that in the results of the first output or wherever it's important. But just keep that in your head. Now we've got some source control. So here's the beautiful thing about our source control. Means that you can do something like this: beard.media/notebooks with a capital N. And that's going to take you to my GitHub repository. And this is my Jupyter Notebooks repository. If we went and had a look in our notebooks, we can see that we're in not.NET. That was the ones we were doing. We'll have a look at one of the DBA Tools ones. Let's click, let's have extended events. And the thing with our GitHub is that mostly first time, sometimes with a bit of refresh, GitHub will render, of course, there we go, let's try again. GitHub will render our notebook in the browser. So we can't run it, but we can see the text that we wrote, we can see the code that we've written, and we can see the results that we've got. Here are our results from getDBA exe session. So these are all included. So this is really useful. It's a good way of sharing amongst your team. It's a great way if you use gists to say, hey, why is this not working? I'm doing it all the time for my friends in the data platform community. We'll say, why does this not work in PowerShell? Okay, let's go through. Let's explain how variables work. Yeah, let's see. No, you've got to use that help comparison operator. And they send me the information. I'll send them back a notebook because it'll have the results in so they can see. It'll have some information, so we've written about it. They can run it in Azure Data Studio and they can do it themselves. So it's a really neat way of sharing and transferring that information. So whilst we're, let's go back to here. Whilst we're, seriously, you opened down there, thank you. Whilst we're in GitHub, let's come back up a level to my repository. And in the repository, we've got presentations. So the presentations is going to have the 2020 directory, and where are we? There we are, PowerShell user group, and here is the PowerPoint. So you can go and grab that PowerPoint. You can grab anything I've got there, take it, make use of it. Just do what you will. We'll also find that if we look for, I probably should have done that logged in. There we go. If we look for ADS Notebook, I've written a module called ADS Notebook, which you'll find on the gallery, and that enables you to create new workbooks programmatically, either PowerShell, .NET PowerShell, or SQL Notebooks. We can do that. We create a cell, say it's either code or text, pass in the information, and also that's really interesting. It's because we're not on the main branch, Rob. We are on the main branch, Rob. I totally expected there to be more functions in there. Let's just check this. File list. There we go. So we do have some more notebooks. Phew. So in the Powershell Gallery, I'm obviously looking in the wrong place there. We've got our new ones. We've got a Convert ADS PowerShell for Markdown, which I use to enable, you can use a link in a SQL notebook that you can click to run PowerShell. So that's really neat if you need it. We've got functions to convert GitHub wikis into a notebook. So Andrew Prusky's written a wiki which has got all of his how to use containers information in it. We run this script just to turn his wiki into executable notebooks for him. But also I've got convert ADS not .NET to .NET and convert ADS .NET to not .NET. So that means that we can write our notebooks in one or the other, run a bit of code and just convert them into the other version. So instead of doing that, we're going to have a look at some, don't save that, thank you very much. We'll have a look at some .NET notebooks. So let's have a look at .NET interactive notebooks. You can see I've got DBA tools directory. It's got exactly the same notebooks as in the not.NET one because I've used the code to swap them over. But let's start with mix and match. So if you remember when we were talking about not.NET notebooks, we said you could have a SQL notebook, or you could have a PowerShell notebook, or a Spark, or Scala, or Python, but that was what you were going to be able to run within that notebook. Within a .NET interactive notebook, you can run different languages at the same time. So I'm just going to hit run all. It's going to run all of the cells. Notice that it's running them all serially, one after the other. There's no parallel execution of the things here. What's happening in our PowerShell session is you can pass your variables along between them. So as long as your user doesn't break that in some way, then some variables that you set up at the top of the notebook are going to be available for every cell block that you use within your notebook. So let's come back up to here and see what we've done. So what we've done is a little bit of setup. Normally I could hide that. Oh, that's neat, isn't it? Look, we can just hit that button, hide away the code. Nobody needs to worry about that. Just hit the play button here and run it. You'll notice in .NET Interactive that the play button doesn't come until you hover over it. Start a stopwatch. Now we can use this magic command. So hash bang C#. And that is going to say, okay, this might be a .NET PowerShell notebook, but this block or this bit of code here, I just want you to run a C#. Like my C# skills are really, really rubbish, but I can at least count the number of files in some C#, and I can write them out to the host. So we can see you've got 10,001 files there, and then I can run some PowerShell to stop my stopwatch and see how long it took. Count the same files with PowerShell 7 this time, and same file number and a stop. But which one was quicker? We'll write a little function, use a bit of Fred's PS host color to make it stand out. So C# did it in 45 milliseconds, PowerShell 7 did it in 286. And we can just run this again. Gives me time to have a drink.
Rob, I have a question.
Go for it.
Is it still necessary to tick the checkbox for showing all kernels in Azure Data Studio?
Super question. I was going to come to that once we've done this bit.
Okay. Yeah, because I have watched your video for finding the setting. Yeah.
Yep, you're absolutely right. The best questions always come about the thing that's coming next.
Yeah. Perfect.
So second time, PowerShell did it faster. We can also pass our variables through. So I could get a variable in C#, put it into an environment variable, and then read it back into PowerShell, or set it in PowerShell and read it back in C#. So there's some cool things that we can do here. Let's have a look at, let's see if I'm going to get this wrong again, but no, this time it's done what I expected. So if we look at the path that our notebook is at, so it's going to be user profile, load of stuff, Jupyter Notebooks, .NET Notebooks, and it's called mix and match. But as far as the notebook itself is concerned, it's sat at my user profile. So how could we fix that? Well, I've already showed that what we could do is let's do something like this, read host. Thank you. Let's read host and prompt. You have to tell me where I am, and then we could just do a dir. And now I can run this. It's going to come up and give me my prompt here. Let's have a look at that a bit closer. There we go. So it's going to tell me what my prompt is. It's going to show you I can't type. And then we can put our results in here. So we can give this to our users. They can say, yep, that's fine. Just put it at D, please. And now we're at the root of D. And that might be useful for our relative. And of course, we could put in our, don't do code, do text, Rob. We could put in here, you know, make sure that you enter the, see, I told you I was rubbish at typing today, the correct path for blah, 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 blah. So it's really easy to give that information and then get your user to then grab it and set those variables as you need them for relative things in .NET Interactive. So we won't save that one because we don't need that one. In this directory, we've got the thing that says, how do I get .NET Interactive? And it's going to say, here are some instructions, go and follow them. I'm going to give you all of these instructions. And you're going to come into probably something like a window that looks like this. It's a Windows terminal. We're running in Anaconda, and we're just going to type Jupyter Lab. You might watch a kitten jump from higher up than he thinks he is. And what that's going to do is to say, look, here we go. I'm going to run this in your browser. And sure enough, it's opened up my browser. The cool thing about this browser, come in a bit. Oh, yes, we can. Excellent. The cool thing about this browser is we've got this console button. So I can do this. I can start writing PS version table. I hit enter. Oh, no, I don't. I hit shift and enter. There we go. And you can see this time that it actually took a moment whilst it was running my code. I'm in a browser here. Cool, this is really cool. You can see down at the bottom that we've got, tells us we're in a .NET PowerShell kernel, tells us that currently we're idle. If we're running a long running script, this is going to be saying running. And we've got our results. This isn't a notebook, but this is a thing. I want you to notice that here, the version is 7.0.2. And if we, thank you, if we go to, let's go to this one, and you can see, if we scroll in a lot, that my current version is 7.1.0. And you might go, yeah, Rob, that's just your prompt. Yeah, well, okay. Let's have a look. There we go, 7.1.0. So that's telling you that the PowerShell that is here, that is my local installed PowerShell with my local install modules, is not the same as this one. This isn't running a 7.0.2 installation that I've got previously. This is running a 7.0.2 installation that is embedded within .NET Interactive itself. So you will find that if we look at what do I want? PS module path dot split shift and enter. There we go. And we can see if we look at the results here that our top path is this one, and that's where our PowerShell core that we're running in our notebook here is actually running. But look, it does still enable us to run our Windows PowerShell and our PowerShell core modules that we've got in our normal installation. Excuse me. Is it tea time? There we go. The kitten needed to escape. So this is still going to run with everything that we've got. So I could run DBA, probably not better run DBA database because we might not have it. So let's run get service star. See what we've got. No, so that would have been wise because my SQL instance is stopped, so I couldn't have actually run anything at all. So that's one way we could run in a browser. We can run our .NET Interactive. But what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to run it here, because I've told you Azure Data Studio is the bomb. This is the place to be. We can do all of this funky rich text view pasting. You've got all of this magic in here. Okay, let's do that. We'll start with a new notebook. Excellent. I've got a new notebook. I don't want a SQL notebook. I'm a PowerShell fella. So what you're going to have there, you're like, oh, well, hang on a minute. I know that I've got everything working. I've got my Jupyter. I've got .NET Interactive installed. We've just seen it. We've just run it. It's all fine. We'll stop it now. Why have I not got it here? So, as my friend so wisely said, what you have to do is you have to go to settings and you have to search here for kernel. And then you're going to look for this view, this setting here, show all kernels, preview mode. Please show all the kernels. And it's ticked. You see it's ticked. Our settings, just like in Visual Studio Code, will save immediately. So they're applied. So that's there. Lo and behold, still don't have it. So what you do is you just change a kernel, pick a kernel, any kernel will do. Normally I pick PowerShell because it will start a little bit quicker. And this time I think I picked, oh yes, I did, I pressed PySpark. And then when you do it, then you have all of the .NET kernels. So let's call, look, here we go. We've got a mouse that's vanished. We've got .NET C#, F#, we've got our PowerShell. Awesome. That's really cool. Let's change it, Rob. Otherwise it's going to look really silly. Now we're here and you can see that everything is back to being as we expected. We've got our IntelliSense all working. We're getting our results. They're all coming out. One of the good things that we can do is we can do things like this. We can go describe. Thanks. I changed my cute. Describe. Oh, no. Notebooks. And we'll just do it. Yes. Oh. There we go. And we'll say true should be true. It shows colors spelt the English way because I'm English, and we'll say false should be true. And now when we run that, bingo, look at this. It's neat. We've got, well, you can see we've got colors there in our output. So that's much nicer than you get within a normal notebook. Just looking. Normal notebook. Oh, thank you so much. Pester will complain to me. So we'll save that there and then we'll run. Oh, now that's interesting. So Pester, so DBHX works in a notebook because we use Pester version 4. Pester version 5 obviously doesn't like the fact that what's happening is we're taking this code, we're giving it to a Python package called PowerShell. It is giving it to the PowerShell that's running on the machine, running it, taking the results, giving it back to us. They're streaming the results back to us, but it's giving the results back to us. Pester obviously still doesn't think that that's a saved file. Very interesting. Haven't tried that before because it works over here, but it doesn't work there. Interesting. So there was something else I was going to say. Nope, completely forgotten. I had another point to make about that as well, and I've completely forgotten. So these are our notebooks, and you know we can do things like oh, this is kind of fun. What happens with our pipeline operators? So we could take a log file, we can get our content, and we can just grab the first line. That's cool. But if the file doesn't exist, you know, if you look at this one, the file doesn't exist. What we're getting is 2 errors. So we're getting an error for can't find a path, and we're getting an error because we've tried to pass something to an array and get the first one, and it's nothing there. Okay, so we're like, right, okay. Think of our users. We've got to try and making sure that we can make this work better. So we'll put in a try catch. So if we get a problem here, then we're just going to write out a warning. Oh, yeah, of course. It's not a terminating error, is it? It's just an error. Right, okay, we'll do error action stop. We'll grab our error. Now we've got a proper warning for our users. And I have literally used that warning as messages to give back to users, particularly when I worked with the DBA team where there were 5 of us. And we wrote this thing, and I had all these modules that did all of these things, and the error message was always, uh-oh, the beard is sad. And then we were asked to automate the creation of these SQL instances, the whole thing, from blank VM, not VMware, from blank Hyper-V hosts up. Every time they ran, they wanted to just create everything. So we did that. we put this code in that did all the restores and everything. We use the same code because we know it works. Anyway, turns out that the developers then took that and plugged it into Octopus Deploy. And I had the classic scenario where somebody walked up to the desk of the DBAs and said, excuse me, can we make the beard happy, please? But my log file says the beard is sad. Right, okay. So when you write funny things in your error messages, just remember they might get used somewhere else as you go forward. Anyway, so we'll then have to write this. So now we're going to write two things. So we've got one for if the file doesn't exist and one if we haven't got any content in the file. And you end up with some code that looks like this, and it's a bit complicated. These new pipeline operators make it much nicer. So you can do something like this. Look at that. It's really cool. We've set our take toggle off and let's come into here. So we set our path. There's our path to our variable, and then we said run this code. If it fails, stop. If it doesn't fail, run this code. And that's what this and means. Now I have put error action silently continue, because if you don't, then you just get the error message out. So if you take that away, you're going to get the error message because the path doesn't exist. So you would have to let's Control Z that, change that. So if you want to maybe do it a different way, I think, okay, we'll get the message. Sorry, we'll get the content of the file, but if we have an error, we'll run the second code. Then we use two pipes like this. So now we can go like that. File doesn't exist, we get an error. If it did exist, we'd get our contents. You can assign it to a variable, absolutely no problem. So the first time we try to run this, we're trying to get our content. Come on, come over. Come over. There we go. And if we can't, we'll write an error. And then we'll try and get the first line out of our array. And if not, we'll write an error. So we run that once with a file that exists, once without a file that exists, and you can see now we're getting the proper results. Here's something that is very important to me, nulls. Nulls are important to me because I'm a data person, and as far as a data person is concerned, what a null means is doesn't mean true, doesn't mean false, doesn't mean empty, doesn't mean empty string. It means literally, whereas a null in PowerShell means empty, a thing that doesn't exist. And it's really important because if we ran some code like this, so we're going to check for anybody that's clean shaven, and in our video, everybody has beards. So if clean shaven is null, is not there, then we're going to say no beard found. Otherwise, we're going to put a path. Maybe we're going to do something like test a path, and if it doesn't exist, we're going to create it. If it does, we're going to set the value to it. Whatever. We're going to have some code like this. So that's how we could do it. We do an if not, or we can do a null equal. Now, what we can do here is use two question marks. And that says, if I am a null, carry on. If I am not, run this command. Command's just going to print out, no, we're not good. So we could absolutely run something like this. Say, if my path is null, then, if my file count is null, then go and get me the files. And you'll notice we're used to running script blocks with curly braces. And here I'm having to use braces, just ordinary braces. But that's what happens. We run this, I've now got 101 files. But if we check this, this is saying, am I null? Maybe I'm checking for a path that isn't there. No. If this value is null, we're going to run that. Otherwise, we're just going to return this value. So what I should have done when I was doing that was do start service MS SQL Server. There we go. So we do things like this. Get me the databases from my local instance where I don't have a database. Database name is wrong. If that is null, then write me out a warning. That's not going to work for get child item, for get content, for get AD user, for get AD group, for any of those things, because the PowerShell team believe that if there is nothing returned to get child item, it is an error. In DBA tools, we believe that if nothing is returned from your command, nothing is returned. It's not an error. It's not broken. Here I've said, get me the database that's called Nope. And as far as I'm concerned, DBA Tools has said, hang on a minute, I look on my instance, I'll bring you back all the databases that are called Nope. There aren't any. So here you go. Here's nothing. Perfectly what we expect. But remember, we said SQL null, PowerShell null, empty. This means that when you do something like this, a DB results, the result of selecting a null being returned from a SQL query, is a system.db null type, which is not the same as a PowerShell null. And this comparison operator only works against this null. When we run that, nothing. I will write an output if I am null. Well, it's not null. What? Hang on a minute. It blatantly is a null. Okay. This means that what you have to do to get around this is you go, well, hang on a minute. I literally had a function in those modules we were talking about earlier, which did exactly this. test db null, which gave you back a null. So now we're going to have to say, well, if you are a system db null, then actually you're a PowerShell null, because now we're working in PowerShell. And that means that then we can use this comparison operator and say, hey, if a null, write a warning. There's our warning. Okay, so these are some of the ways that you can use notebooks to be able to show stuff like this. DBA tools, we actually create a Docker container, so we're controlling the environment. So if you want to control what's happening, you could make use of that code, create a Docker environment, and then all the following notebooks are just going to be able to interact with an environment that you've set up and you know how it exists. Let's do a runbook thing. So this notebook, this is the last one I'm going to do. So this notebook is kind of long, does all sorts of cool things. It'll show you how to do pivot tables and pivot charts and all sorts of groovy things with PowerShell and Excel. But the one that I like the most is this one. So let me just check that everything is as I expect it to be. Oh no, that's the, actually not the one that I was expecting to run. Let's come back up to here and do this. So this is going to use the import Excel module from Doug Fink. James O'Neill has done a lot of work on it, and it means you can create Excel workbooks without even having to have Excel. And you run something like this, and you can see that, you know, runbook maybe for troubleshooting. One things we might want to just go and grab is what services do we have running, what processes do we have running. I'm just going to put a string in because it takes a minute to run. We grab our system and application logs, the last 100 maybe, or something that's useful to us, and we'll, you know, I'm a SQL guy, so we're going to be grabbing our Sql Error Log. And I mean, it's been open the entire time that's been zoomed in. It just didn't open in front of us. And what we've got here is, this is our Sql Error Log. Honestly, this is just what a Sql Error Log looks like. There's our application event log. Again, you know, actually full of a lot of SQL stuff because we just started SQL up. But it is just, let's come over a bit. It is just a log out of our event log. Look at our system one. There we go. What have we got in here? Here we go. So yeah. Installation successful. We've got some updates going on there. You know, this is just a system log. See what services we've got running, and we just chuck all that in Excel, and it's just come through nice and quickly. So I think that's a really super way of doing it. This notebook, as you can see, there's an awful lot in it, but it is a really good way of grabbing stuff. So I'm going to say use notebooks, because they're really cool, because you can get the results, which is really useful for incident response, for attaching to incidents, because you can use them to help to train people or to do presentations. Remember that it's stored on disk, the results are stored on disk. Remember how cool the copy paste magic is in Azure Data Studio. That bit's not going to work if you run it in Jupyter and Lab in a browser, or if you run it in Visual Studio Code. That's Azure Data Studio specialness. So that's why we use Azure Data Studio. Use source control. Remember your results are stored on disk. Remember the little trick just to get .NET Interactive to be seen within your ADS. Remember that your .NET PowerShell notebook does not know where it is, so you might need to prompt your users, but your not .NET ones now do. My name is Rob. Feel free to ask me any questions about all things notebook. I am always willing to talk notebooks. I will talk notebooks forever. They are fabulous things. If you have any questions, shout or type if you're shy.
Yeah, I have a question. In the top right corner, there is a little shield icon. Can you explain the function of it?
So the little shield icon, let's see if we can do that.
Sure.
It says trusted.
Okay.
And that means, am I allowed to run external code? The code outside of my notebook. If we come back to my GitHub repository, I've got adding PowerShell to SQL Notebooks. So that's not trusted. It says not trusted. The shield has got a cross on it. What we do here is we get a link like this. So we can open a new terminal. So I can click these things and you can see how they're running. So we created a link that's just saying a command, terminal focus, open a terminal, send sequence to send some PowerShell. Because this, close that, because this is not trusted, if we now trust it, I can now open a terminal. the kitten can try and destroy everything.
Cat war.
His bed just slid straight off, I think. Okay, we could start PowerShell core. Well, we do that anyway, so we could set our location, we could list some files, and we could even, if we're feeling particularly silly, we can play some Metallica.
So when I got you, more or less, you cannot run code cells when it's not trusted, or you cannot run external applications.
External. Okay. So what we're doing here is we're actually running in the terminal. So we're actually running the terminal here. And okay, stop now. So this is a SQL notebook. Right. So when notebooks first came out, we could have SQL, but we couldn't run PowerShell. Well, of course, I want to run PowerShell and SQL, please. So now we can use PowerShell notebooks, but here what we could do is use this to run an external command. But you could only do it if I untrust this notebook. Now these links don't work. They just, nothing happens. Okay. If it was a PowerShell notebook, then I could run PowerShell in a code block, but this is a text block.
Okay.
I've got to remember to look up there and not down there.
And the rubber icon more or less clears all results.
Absolutely.
So there's no possibility to clear just specific results.
Yes, there is. So if we come back to here, if I just want to clear the results from this one, I can come through and I can use clear result.
Okay.
Now, what you could do if you wanted to take that a step further is you could make use of this code that's running a command, and you could work out that if I do Ctrl-Shift-P and type clear cell result, tells me what the shortcut key is for it, but nothing much else. But if I come to keyboard shortcuts and search for clear cell result, you toad, they're not always there. I've got to do that. So if we pick the right ones, so for that one you're going to have to go and search for what the command is. I might try and find that out for you. But for something else, there it is. There. That's weird. That only shows if you don't type the full name in. Cool. Okay, so what we've got there is the command that's called behind the scenes to do it. So you could actually just take this and add it into a text block and just say, you know, press this please at the end. You'll have to do a bit of work, I think. This is carrying on from a conversation I had 2 days ago in the last presentation, so that's why I'm kind of thinking about it. You're going to have to think about what you do, because you're going to need to find out how to reference that cell. So that might be kind of a fun challenge. We were talking about it because the question was, how can I ensure that the results are cleared before I commit to source control? My honest answer, and I still say that this is the best one, is that you trust. You educate your users and you trust them. You explain the problem for it and you make sure that they follow that process because you've educated them. That's by far going to be the best way of getting it happen. If you want to validate it, then you could set up a Git hook, but you're going to have to do that on everybody's machine. You're going to have to get into the .git folder and set it up and make it work on a commit and blah, blah, blah. That's going to be kind of difficult. Otherwise, you take it as a webhook and you do it once you've committed it up, but then, hey, the results are already in the web, and that's the whole point of not doing it. So there was some fascinating discussions as we worked around how we could possibly do it.
I have another question about the shield in the top right corner. When in which state has the file, or do the file needs to be to get that automatically, or is it like the files that come from the internet are automatically unblocked or blocked or so? Do you have any experience with that? So the files of so is a file that downloads from the internet. Okay, perfect.
Let's find out. I haven't done this for a while, so I wasn't sure what the answer was. Let's come back to. I was in my own repository for ADS Notebooks, the actual repositories in the SQL Collaborative. That's why the extra functions went there. Because being the bad open source maintainer that I am, I was actually working on the branch in the proper repository and I hadn't forked it. So, oops. Now it makes sense. Let's grab one of these. Let's pick up this one. I would imagine. Right, is that what you're after? Tablet. Okay. Making sure my wife has everything that she requires, because that is, as you know, the most important thing. So if we, I can't download it.
Hey, Rob.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
If you go to raw, just if you click on the raw and then copy the path, and then in ADS, sorry, I'm kiting. If you don't mind, copy that and then Ctrl O, Azure Data Studio, and paste that and open. Voila, that's it.
There we go. And that answers our question. Look, there's a start menu. And now,
perfect.
Again.
Okay.
There we go. Thank you,
what I expected. Perfect. Thank you.
No worries. There is ways. So my team uses notebooks quite a lot. We have massive amount of notebooks and Jupyter books. So what we've done internally, and that's something that I need to double check with my team, is that for a massive amount of books, if you actually store this and organize it in Workspace as well, so that way, you just open a workspace and it loads everything up for you. There is a way of marking it to be trusted automatically, so that way you don't have to click every single one of them. So this is kind of like new bits that we're actually getting accustomed to as well internally. The thing that because we develop internal extension to Azure Data Studio as well. So I just have to remember whether that was specifically because we have our own internal extension or whether that's applicable widely. So I'll have to follow up with the engineers and share it with Rob once I know so that he can blog about it. Yeah.
There we go.
Okay,
so
thank you.
The other thing, as you can tell, is that it's all open source, just like VS Code is, like the extensions are. Azure Data Studio is open source. The notebook also all open source. Via GitHub, you can raise issues and interact with the team, and they're a fantastic team. Julian and all the rest of them, very active on Twitter, very willing to answer questions and help, and particularly with regard to notebooks and how they can be made better. So if nobody has any more questions, then I should say thank you very much. But
are there any more questions?
Well, I would have one last question, maybe.
Go for it.
So, is there any best practice regarding the structuring of notebooks? So, do you create a notebook for each issue or each support case, or can you somehow structure different kind of pages in one notebook, or how is it compared to, let's say, OneNote, for instance?
So what I would do is I would do this. and hope that let's find programmatically. So the problem is that I'm in the process of switching my domain with beard programmatically. Let's try that one. Oh, that's users. That's not what we want. This will make sense in a second when I can find the right. Notebooks. Dynamically, that's the word I should have used, not programmatically. Here we go. So what I do is we used Azure Devops, and in Azure Devops we had a set of notebooks, and these were each maybe in a directory. So what I would suggest is that you have a directory called incidents, and then types of incident, because you want your base template notebooks to be kept in source control. And then, I don't know, let's say you've got one for Active Directory, you've got one for Azure, you've got one for SQL databases. And then within those directories, you've got notebooks for the general type of incident that you've got, and keep putting those through. And what we did when we deployed those with Azure DevOps, so we kept all of those in source control, and we then deployed them out to the jump boxes that the teams would use when they were on call. And we'd do that with Azure DevOps, who had 3 domains or 3 different jump boxes we need to deploy to. And as part of that deployment, we would run this code. And basically what that code does is creates index. So where is our index? One of these has got an index. There we go. So then we ended up with an index like this. So the index then is the stuff that we decided to write at the top, and then a notebook name. We're saying that it's for SQL bits queries, and then it literally, this is where we're talking about the code. We've just hidden all the code. There's a bit of it here, but we can just hide that up. And it just says to run a copy of the notebook Brent users, click the run button, which isn't going to work because that path is all kinds of wrong. But if the path was correct, you just press play and it just opens, it would copy that notebook to their local directory. Right, let's do it.
So you could produce like some table of contents over your.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But even like, so a step further than table of contents.
Yeah.
Let's copy this path. That was the wrong one to do. That was the right one to do. Because then what it's done is it's opened up this notebook, but it's saved it in the directory that I've asked it to save it. It's put the date and time on it, and it's put my username on it. So remember my problem about incidents and doing it? This was the way that we solved it at that client, but it was all done at runtime.
Could you paste the URL to the article in the chat?
I certainly can.
So that I can maybe read through later on.
There we go.
Thanks a lot.
So yeah, so that's how I would do it. So I would create blank template notebooks for each type of incident, put them in a directory, run that to create an index notebook. And then when an incident occurs, click, a new one is opened, because the new one that's opened is the one that you want to then attach to your incident response system, take to your wash up meeting. That's the one that you want. And then the other one is the one that you want to keep in source control and develop to make it better.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, by the way, if you're in Azure DevOps, there's also, I think there's an extension for rendering Jupyter Notebooks in Azure DevOps, but I don't know if it suits the purpose. It's not. You're nodding.
It will allow you to view the notebook within Azure DevOps.
Yeah.
Which is okay, it's cool, but there's plenty more that you can do.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're running just a SQL notebook, you can actually run it with SQL Agent, which is a scheduler, and it will take the results and put it into a database, and then you've just got a notebook you can use. So there's a lot more you can do there, but that's only SQL notebooks and not PowerShell ones. Yeah.
Yeah, I used the notebook for my last presentation when I talked about secret management and so on, and really cool. But the only issue I have was I used some code block that was in PowerShell 5.1, so in Windows PowerShell 5.1, and I've written it in a .NET Interactive Notebook, and I can't run Windows PowerShell code in .NET Interactive Notebooks.
Wow.
So I'm not getting that. What was it? The Posh key parts module, I think it was. I'm getting the error message for cannot import. This DLL because of a DLL mismatch.
Is that module not core compatible?
Yes. Yeah, that was the problem. So I have to go out to a terminal and copy and paste that code. But as I understand you, I cannot mix kernels inside of a .NET Interactive Notebook with a PowerShell 5.1, or is that possible? No,
it's not.
Yeah.
But what I wondered was.
Yeah.
Oh, what I wondered was. If we had a .NET PowerShell, would we not?
Okay, so if I can use remoting to go to the Windows PowerShell session.
I don't know if this will work.
Yeah, what I don't try is import the module with use Windows PowerShell or so.
I've messed that up somewhere, but give that a go.
Yeah. Okay. I will try that, because I will speak about the same topic next year in the Hamburg PowerShell user group. So I will prepare some other stuff. So I will try that. Okay. Good input. Thank you.
Welcome.
So, any other questions? Everybody's happy. Everybody understand everything.
Was it useful? Is it something that
was useful?
More or less, it was useful, but I did not understand everything. But I will rewatch the recording, so it was a pleasure. I learned a lot, so
good.
Thanks a lot.
And ask me.
Yeah,
Get in touch.
I asked all the questions I have so far.
But I mean, in the future, get in
Yeah,
touch
sure.
and feel free to ask
Sure.
me.
Thanks.
Okay, in which case, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm waiting till you present in German.
Eines Tages.
Yeah.
Heute ist nicht dieses Tag.
Okay. Okay, so thank you for presenting, Rob. And
thank you for having me.
yeah, I hope I can speak to you about some DBA tools demos or DBA checks demos or so. Some of that presentations in mind.
Okay.
Okay, good. Then there are not any more questions. Then have a nice Christmas. Stay safe, and we will see you next year. I will shout out an appointment for January, I think, soon. And thank you. Bye bye.
Peace.